Hello, everybody. So I'm welcome.
Great intro.
Hello.
While I'm eating wafers, you can do your little intro.
Yeah, Evan's my little intro. See how he infantilizes me. This is nonstop, folks. Full disclosure, guys.
So your big intro.
Yeah, my big adult intro.
Your ample tracts of land.
Okay, this is gonna be hard. That's part of the problem. You're gonna make me laugh, and it's like, okay, so you can probably tell, and there's a good chance that I will sound two different ways in this episode to you, listener, because we're gonna record it in two parts. I've got some version of the lung rot that's going around. Evan had it. I had it before that.
I had COVID.
I have it now. So,
I feel great.
Yeah, Evan feels really good. He's eating wafers. I can't imagine eating something so small and flaky right now. That would be,
fuck your shit up.
If I even accidentally breathed in while enjoying a smackerel, I would definitely doom myself. I'm jacked up on cold medicine right now.
Hell yeah.
That shit makes me feel so weird.
Yeah.
You ever take like Dayquil?
Yeah, Dayquil. Yeah, I've taken Dayquil. Yeah,
I can't do NyQuil. NyQuil's like a whole different. NyQuil's demented. NyQuil makes me feel like I'm fucking dying. But Dayquil.
Well, you're supposed to go to sleep after.
Well, that's the problem. I don't. Like I take NyQuil and then my body like reacts to it, and then I end up just having like a panic attack, and I can't sleep, and I just feel fucking crazy. Yeah, I actually sleep fine with Dayquil, so I just take Dayquil.
Yeah. Because, NyQuil's got that duxylamine succinate that's supposed to put you to sleep.
Helps you suck ducks.
Yeah. Yep. Duck sucker.
All right. So, how's your week been?
Well, yeah. No, I've actually had a great weekend. I've basically done nothing but lift weights and play the new Fire Emblem on Switch. So
cool.
It was pretty sweet. Yep.
You're enjoying it?
Yeah, it rules. Yeah. I've played it all weekend.
I've never played a Fire Emblem game.
You've never? Yeah, really? Yeah. I mean, I haven't played one since, like, the one that came out for Wii. What was that? Like, Radiant Dawn or something like that?
I don't know.
But I played the Game Boy Advance ones when I was a little guy.
Yeah.
And then the GameCube and the Wii one. I haven't played any of the new ones. Like, I never had, like, a 3DS or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't play the other Switch one that came out, but I stole my roommate's Switch, and I've been playing Engage on it, and it's really good.
It's what, like an RTS?
Yeah, it's basically like a JRPG, but with like it's all like turn-based like grid strategy, like fighting, kind of like Wasteland.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Or
except
is it more like Final Fantasy Tactics?
Never played Final Fantasy Tactics.
Oh, okay.
Maybe though. Because, like, it's like Wasteland where it's that, like, grid turn-based fighting, except, like, there's not really, like, it's not like an open world thing where you can, like, walk around and stuff like that. Like, you have, like, chapters that you basically, like, play match, like,
I've seen, like, a few little snippets of it, and it kind of looked like, don't take this the wrong way, because I don't mean it in a bad way, but it looked like those, like anime dating simulator games.
Oh, dude, this is this is apparently a thing with these games now. The old ones did not used to be this anime-y.
Yeah.
But, like, this one is, like, yeah, it's, like, all the, like, girls in it have these, like, wicked, like, little cutesy voices with gigantic knockers.
Oh, my God.
And, like, wicked skimpy outfits, and it's like, all right, this feels kind of gross.
Yeah. But it also feels so good.
Yeah, I mean, they match my waifu pillows that I have, so, you know.
Perfect.
Yeah, my ample collection of waifu pillows.
Yeah. Evan's waifu pillowcases can stand up on their own. They don't need a pillow inside
didn't
them.
come like that.
Right, but he did. And then that's why... Yeah. I might check it out, honestly. I've been like looking for something kind of JRPG-ish to play. I was fucking around with... I replayed Final Fantasy X recently, and like that game is just so goddamn delectable. But I've played it so many times, and it's like, you know... And I've been messing around with Divinity 2 because that came out on console, and so like because I couldn't really run it on my laptop, So that's pretty fun.
Sorry, I'm just switching wafers. So
yeah, we got to get a different flavor going. I understand. I understand.
This one's orange. Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, no. This definitely will scratch the JRPG itch for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's like the dialogue's like super cheesy and like kind of annoying. I just skipped through all of that. I just want to fight. So
hell yeah, dude. That's kind of like me. I just want to fight too, honestly.
Yeah. I just want to fight and fuck.
Yeah, dude. And that's, hey, tell you what.
Fight, fucking suck.
And enjoy some tropical flavored wafers.
No, these are from Brazil.
Nice, dude. Brazil rules.
No, not quite as good as Portugal, but they're pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to compare. I feel like it's weird to compare. Let's just say that they both are cool.
Yeah, the son will never compare to the father, but, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. Jesus is pretty great.
Yep, Portugal could die, man.
I just mean compared to the father, like he's pretty cool. He is.
He's both the father and the son.
And for a while, that was true of Brazil.
Yeah.
We should do some Portuguese and Brazilian history episodes. I'm surprised we haven't, because we both love that shit.
No, we've been getting some Portuguese listeners too. So
I know. Why don't we? Because I'm on a time limit here. So as I said, you guys might notice that I sound different in the first half of this episode and the second half of this episode. We're going to record in 2 parts just so I don't have to do like a full hour. But this also isn't going to be a super long one. So we're going to get through the first chunk now. And then if you notice like a marked difference in the sound of my voice, that's why. It's studio magic, baby. That's how we do things in
Hollywood.
In Hollywood, exactly. Before this fucking Dayquil wears off. All right. So, speaking of listeners,
the little intro thing, right? We're gonna do the intro music.
Yeah, you know what? Yes, I guess we should. I guess we should. I was kind of gonna just talk about that, but yeah, we'll do the intro.
Yeah, let's throw that shit in here.
We'll do that right here, right now. And we're back. So, speaking of listeners that we're getting and episodes that we want to reach out to them, you may remember a couple episodes ago when Evan and I were taking inventory of our year 2022 in podcasting. We discussed the various countries and regions where our show gets downloaded, the least and the most, and et cetera, et cetera. And as is to be expected, we are far and away the most popular in the United States, but then more broadly, sort of in the Anglosphere in general, the Anglophone world.
Yep. Fellow English speakers.
Which sort of makes sense. I mean, we do the show in English, and lots of people speak English all over.
The only language you and I speak fluently, at least.
Yeah. We each know a few.
I can swear in Portuguese, but that doesn't make for good listening.
Yeah, and I can order food in Italian, but that's about it. That's true. I studied Italian in high school, but all I really remember is, and it got me by in Italy, but all I really remember is like how to ask for certain food items and what different fruits are called and stuff. That's all I remember.
I know a little Spanish, but...
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Spanish is important. Everybody knows a little Spanish. I digress. So, obviously, as an English language show, we are most popular in English-speaking countries. But of the major English-speaking nations, one continues to be the most enigmatic and elusive to us, and that is Australia. I think we get the least Australian listeners compared to, say, the UK, Ireland, Canada. I think
we have way more Australian listeners than Ireland.
Okay, well they're beating Ireland, so you guys are next.
Way more.
We're gonna have to
matter
do.
Of fact, until pretty recently, we had more Australian than Canadian.
Yeah, but not anymore. Canada's been
not anymore. Australia's number 4.
Yeah. Okay. Well. So maybe we'll have to do an episode on potatoes or something. But my point is, Australia
you did some light lying back there, but
what?
You did some light lying back there, but.
Well, whatever. It wasn't intentional. My point is, Australia. I wanna pander to you, and it's not that we don't have any listeners down under, because we do, and we love them.
Listen to a country,
and they're super hot and sexy, and they have just the cutest little accents. I think you would agree.
I am an open Aussophile.
Really?
I love Australia. Oh yeah, the accent's great. The slang is the best in the Anglo world.
Yeah, I like how fast and loose you guys are with your cussing too. It's great.
Yeah, Australia's like on the top of my list of places I would like to visit. Australia's rules. Not such a big fan of the huntsman spiders. Not a big fan about that.
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah, I read a story this back in the day, some forum. Must have been Reddit. Some dude who was Australian, and he sat on a toilet, and a huntsman spider grazed or in some way touched upon his ball sack when he sat on the toilet. And that seems like a bad time.
If that's even a little bit common, then
if my balls are in danger of getting huntsman spidered,
hard pass.
Yeah, hard pass. We're gonna need to set some ground rules.
And then, of course, there's the drop bears.
Drop bears.
I forget what it is, but koalas have is it syphilis? Like a huge amount of koalas have some.
Yeah, maybe
STD.
when you're done with them.
Yeah, dude. Sick. Just got fucking smoked on my own show.
Dude, fucking owned.
Oh,
dude.
man. It made me look like such a fucking loser, dude.
Yeah, dude.
But so anyway, we've never really done an episode on Australian history, and I figured as an effort to pander to our Australian listeners and potentially grow our listener base, and also as a note of appreciation to those beautiful Aussies that already listen to us, I decided to change that, and I decided to do an episode on one of my favorite little bits of kind of Australian weird history today. Mm-hmm. It's something that I've sort of known about peripherally for years. I think I probably first heard about this in college or shortly thereafter. And for a long time, it was something that was sort of an unsolved mystery. But it came back into my scope sometime over the summer, this past summer, when due to modern forensics and just people that have been kind of on the case forever, it's potentially / probably solved. And so I think that's kind of cool. And so I wanted to talk about, of course, you may have already guessed it if you're an Aussie, and if you're not, whatever, it's what you're listening to the show for. The famous Somerton Man Case, also sometimes known as the Tamam Shud Case.
No, it's the time that Harvey Keitel died in Australia.
Yeah.
Because he looks like Harvey Keitel.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Yeah. So for the better part of a century, this particular discovery has baffled basically everybody, conjuring up visions of political espionage, really dense sort of geopolitical conspiracies, and these ideas have kept imaginations running wild forever. Part of the allure was that it seemed like it might never be solved, and then in the summer of 2022, there were some major breaks in the case that will kind of forever change how cases like this, and this case in particular, are discussed. So I want to spend a little time today exploring this case and the grip that it's held on the public imagination, and then kind of shift gears and start talking about the kind of modern developments, the new breaks in the case, and then what they mean for the story as a whole. Plus, this is also going to be an opportunity for me to whip up a soundtrack of some of my favorite Aussie music, which I think will be a treat. We really like putting together our little playlists for you guys. Also, listen to our playlist. There is now a playlist, a Left Unread playlist. It's called Left L.U.M.P. We shared it on Twitter, and we update it now weekly whenever the show comes out, and it's got all of the music that we use on the show. And if you're just ever interested, it's cool to have.
One thing I really like about Australian bands is that they all have super normal names, like Carnival.
Yeah, that's so great example.
And like 12-Foot Ninja.
Of a band that I actually, okay, two great examples of bands that like are pretty cool and have stuff that I like, but I have like a really hard time saying I'm a fan of because they're so poorly named. It's like it's really tough to say like, oh, like I love Carnival. Like that's one of the worst band names I've ever heard. You know, and there are bad like there's
up there with,
Trapped is a band name. Trapped is a better band name than Carnival. Carnival's a great band.
Carnival is down there with like Chick Chick Chick. You know, the one where it's just 3 exclamation marks.
Oh fuck! I don't even know what that is.
That's a band. Yeah, that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. It's the band that's just 3 exclamation marks. You're supposed to pronounce it Chick Chick Chick. Like,
I don't like that.
That I think has got to be maybe ranked the worst band name.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're gonna have some Aussie music on the show. Well, it's gonna be all Aussie music, and there's a lot of good stuff. And I've actually pretty much got the playlist already set. I had that set before I even started writing up these notes.
Yeah. You know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the band name that's so bad it's almost good, but also Aussie. Of course, King Gizzard.
Oh,
King
sure.
Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Yeah. So King Gizzard's not in this one because it's going to be a lot of 70s, 80s, and 90s stuff. But
yeah,
King Gizzard rules.
Okay, yeah. See, King Gizzard can get away with a name like that just because, like, you know,
that's a great name, though. I actually disagree because I think King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard is a really good name.
There's only one band that I think could get away with that name, and that is the band that is named King.
Well,
Gizzard.
that's what I'm saying. Like, you gotta sometimes you gotta earn a name, and like sometimes it just doesn't.
They've earned it.
It just doesn't pay off. Like, okay, Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd is a good band name, but like if you just like named, if there wasn't a band named Pink Floyd, and you just named your band Pink Floyd today, like bad band name, but until you've earned it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, some band names are great from the start, regardless of whether you've earned it or not. Like Genesis. Genesis is a fucking great band name. I think. Classic. Simple. Great. And it was a great band. I liked Genesis. I like all the periods of Genesis.
And also, extra points for naming themselves that in the 60s when there were a lot of bad band names going around.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and then they were like a cool prog rock band, and then they were like the best like 80s trash band. And yeah.
80s pop, yeah.
Yeah, they were so good. Anyway, I digress. That being said,
I love Genesis.
Yeah, Genesis is great.
You'll hear no bad words about them from my mouth.
No. So anyway, I digress. Let's dive in before I die, and we're gonna start our discussion of the mysterious case of the Somerton Man.
Take a little walk to the edge of town and go across the track where the viaduct looms like a bird of doom as it ships and cracks, where secrets lie in the border fires and the humming wires. Yeah, man, you know you're never coming back. Across the square, across the bridge, past the mills, past the stacks. On a gathering storm comes a tall, handsome man in a dusty black coat with a red right hand. Wrap you in his arms, tell you that you've been a good boy. He'll rekindle all the dreams that took you a lifetime to destroy. He'll reach deep into the hole, heal your shrinking soul, but there won't be a single thing that you can do. He's a god, he's a man, he's a ghost, he's a guru. They're whispering his name through this disappearing land, but hidden in his coat is a red right hand. You don't owe no money to get you
So it's 8 a.m. on the morning of December 1st, 1948.
7:05 p.m.
on Somerton Park Beach in the Adelaide suburb of Somerton Park. It is, as a reminder for our listeners in the Northern Hemisphere, summer in Australia at this point. And so some degree of beach activity is to be expected, even on a Wednesday morning. Although I think those lucky bastards, especially in South Australia, get closer to year-round beach weather than we do, that's for sure. But this is especially true in a seaside community like Somerton Park, which it's quiet, it's relatively small, especially in 1948, has a reputation as a nice place to spend an afternoon in the sun and surf. Only this morning is different. There are police on the scene, and the beach is being thoroughly examined, drawing the interest of a few passersby and slowly becoming the talk of the small suburb. They say a body has been found on the beach. Nobody has any idea who it could be, though the speculation begins immediately. Could it be a drunk who stumbled and fell? Someone who had a sudden heart attack? Was it a murder? Were you going to say something?
Is it famous Hollywood actor Harvey Keitel?
Right.
Is it known at that point because it's the 50s? But
yeah, and he was probably like
a little guy?
Yeah, just a little dude. It was actually the 40s. This is 1940.
Oh, the 40s. Oh, so he might not even be alive yet.
I think he was probably born in 48. My dad was born in 58. I bet Harvey Keitel is at least 10 years older than my dad.
My dad was born in 55. Oh my God, he's older than I thought. He was born in 1939.
Damn, so he was just a little guy. He was a 9-year-old boy when this happened. So it's not Harvey. It's not Harvey. It's not Harvey.
It's probably not.
But they don't know who it is.
Keitel.
They know who it's not, but they don't know who it is.
Damn, I didn't realize he was that old.
It's definitely not Harvey Keitel. So the police had been contacted at 6:30 a.m. by one John Lyons, a local jeweler, who'd been out for a morning stroll on the beach when he spotted the body of a man, apparently of about average height and build, who appeared to be peacefully sleeping, propped up against the seawall. So when Lyons approached this guy, he quickly surmised the man to be dead rather than sleeping, and he ran to phone the police. So the guy was a white guy, about 40 years of age. They said he looked like an Englisher. That's how they described him. He had Anglo-Saxon features. And the way he was propped with his legs crossed, his eyes were shut.
Aussies have that too, though?
I mean, yeah, but obviously there are people from other places in Australia, like, you know, lots of different immigrants in Australia, just like here. So I think they were just saying he looked like he was from that
English
population. Descent. Yeah. But his face looked totally calm. He literally looked like he had just dozed off. So it appeared that he had died peacefully in his sleep. But it was odd. He's like on the beach. Mm-hmm. He looked to be approximately 40 years of age. He had short-cropped, graying hair, a clean-shaven face, like freshly shaved.
A little young to die naturally in your sleep like that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe less so in the 40s, but still pretty young.
Not much less.
He had hazel green eyes, and he was fully dressed in a brown double-breasted suit, complete with shoes, a tie, and even had a woolen pullover to fight the evening chill, right? So didn't look like foul play. The initial search of his person, and this is pretty interesting, as reported on the front page of the noon edition of the Adelaide News, turned up no identifying documents or anything that might give a single clue as to his identity. That is not to say that he had nothing at all on his person. A search of his pockets revealed a half a pack of Juicy Fruit gum, an Army Club pack of cigarettes that, oddly, it contained 7 cigarettes of a different brand. It didn't have any Army Club cigarettes. It had 7 Kensitas cigarettes in it, a partial box of matches, and a small metal comb. Most interestingly, there were 2 unused transit tickets, one for the rail trip from Adelaide to nearby Henley Beach, and another was a bus ticket out from the city to where he was that also appeared to have been unused. That they couldn't tell as conclusively, but it appeared unused. It wasn't punched or anything.
Sounds like a spook.
Well, right. So it's also immediately clear upon initial examination that the body had at no point been submerged in the water or it was wet. He wasn't drowned. He wasn't swimming. Didn't wash up on shore. He was dry, completely dry. No water in his lungs. His hair wasn't wet. Whatever. The lack of identification, coupled with the man's clean-cut appearance, left the police with the initial impression that this was a suicide. Somebody who got themselves dressed up and went and was going to kill themselves. You see that a lot.
Shoot some gum. Smoked a few cigarettes of a different brand.
He had a cigarette. He had a cigarette unlit, but apparently he was going to put a cigarette in his mouth, and it just sort of fell to his lapel and was just resting gently on his lapel of his coat.
Poisoned cigarette.
Yeah.
Puts it in his mouth, dipped in cyanide or something, dead. Case closed.
The police then they put out their feelers and they start asking around because they want people to figure out who this person is, right? So obviously he gets taken in. They note this guy was missing in the noon edition of the Adelaide News, the News, which it's pretty cool. They have a lot of that stuff archived. You can look at it. Let me see if I can drop this in the.
Yeah, drop me a little clicky
Drop
clip.
you a little linky here.
A little linky poop. Where's
chat? Sorry, I'm doing this with a trackpad right now, so it's. See if that opens for you, okay?
Let's go. My mouse is ready and willing.
So, you got it?
Yeah, I got it.
So, there's just a little blurb on the front page of the noon edition of the December 1st issue of the News.
Dead man found lying on Somerton Beach.
Yeah. I'm gonna read it for you guys. I'm gonna read this little article, and I'm gonna read it in my shittiest Australian accent. Dead man found lying on Somerton Beach. The fully clothed body of a man was found on the beach at Somerton, opposite the crippled children's home, at 6:30 a.m. today. Up to noon, police had no clue to his identity. The body had not been in the water. The man was lying on his back against the seawall. The legs were crossed, and death appeared to have occurred while the man was sleeping. A thorough search of his pockets revealed no papers or anything that would give a clue to his name. The man is thought to have been around 40. He was 5'11" in height and well built. He was clean shaven, with fair hair, slightly grey over the temples, hazel eyes, and was wearing a grey and brown double-breasted coat, brown trousers, socks and shoes, and a brown knitted woolen pullover, white shirt and collar, and red, white, and blue tie. Red, white, and blue, eh? The discovery was made by
our first clue.
The discovery was made by Mr. John Lyons, jeweller of White Road, Somerton, who called Constable Moss of Brighton and Detective Strangway. And that's it. That's the entire article.
I think the best way to reach out to potential Australian listeners is to do their accent. I think they like that.
Yeah, they must love it. But really what I figure, honestly, is that it'll give them an opportunity to feel some sort of national pride and be like, he's not doing it right. Yeah. And also I didn't do any of the the viral TikTok oh no thing. I didn't do that. Okay? That's really You're too Twitter pilled. You haven't been up on the more mainstream meme culture.
I don't use the children's app.
I mean, arguable. You definitely use something that's for people of stunted intelligence, but it's not because of their age. They're just fucking busted.
I'm just saying TikTok. So.
I know.
Well,
but I'm just saying Twitter. I don't know. Twitter's for kids too. Just a different kind of kid.
Twitter is hysterical.
Yeah, man. I know you like
this. Actually reminds me of one. There's this guy on Twitter, Nick Adams, who's some sort of he's an author, writes conservative books, and he's been quite famous over the last few months. Insanely pro-Trump. He goes by the Twitter handle Nick Adams, and then in parentheses Alpha Male.
Oh, I think I've seen this guy.
What a lot of people don't realize until they watch videos of him is that he's Australian. And it just makes it the bit so much funnier. But he's been going on a war against Mars and M&Ms. And I love when you open his videos and he's talking about M&Ms just with his accent. It's great because he just pronounced it M&Ms.
M&Ms.
Yeah, M&Ms and Mars.
Listen here, all right? The thing about Mars bars is they're trying to make all the M&Ms gay. And I just can't stand for it.
Yeah, they tried to make them woke.
I won't stand for it.
Yeah.
You can't make all the M&Ms gay.
Every man's got to take his M&Ms.
Listen, all right? I understand that the green M&M was quite sexy at one point, and she was a beautiful Sheila, and I would have liked to take her down and maybe have a bit of a barbecue with her, all right? Take her out for a couple of lagers and maybe a sausage roll with some tomato sauce. That's what they call ketchup, dude. They call it tomato sauce. What a morally bankrupt society. But you know what they do fucking love in Australia that I can totally get behind is chicken parm.
Really?
Yeah, chicken parm.
Chicken parm.
Except there they eat it with chips instead of spaghetti, which is fucking psycho. I mean, it's fine.
Like fries,
French
chips,
fries.
or like
I mean, French fries and chicken parm sounds perfectly serviceable, but a nice plate of spaghetti for me. You know what I mean?
So wait. So they take fried chicken,
and serve it with French
sauce.
fries.
And French fries?
They don't put it on the French fries like we would with the spaghetti. The French fries
are
on the side.
I thought this was all
and
together.
It's not like I wouldn't dip a French fry in a little marinara. You know what I mean? That sounds pretty. A little marinara.
Fry sounds fucking nice.
Sounds fucking nice, bro. I mean, honestly, it's not the worst idea.
I would try it, but I wouldn't prefer it.
Spaghetti, dude. It's spaghetti with a little parmesan.
I like rigatoni.
Yeah, whatever. I just mean pasta. Yeah. I like a little pasta with my chicken parm.
To Somerton Man, describe you clearly, but the sky began to fall. Am I ever gonna see your face again? Am I ever gonna see your face again? Giant cars and taxis like the waxworks on the moon carry young girls past me, but none of them are you. Am I ever gonna see your face again? Am I ever gonna see your face again? Without you near me, I got no place to go. Wait at the bar, maybe you might show. Am I ever gonna see your face again? Am I ever gonna see your face again? I've got to stop these tears that's falling from my eyes. Go walk out in the rain so no one sees me cry. Am I ever gonna see your face again? Am I ever gonna see your face again? The memory that goes climbing through my brain. I get no answers, all the questions still remain. Am I ever gonna see your face again? Am I ever gonna see your face again? Am I ever gonna see your face again? Am I ever gonna see your face again?
Okay.
Part two.
Yeah, part two. Which I guess we may as well address because I feel like it's going to take me a second to get back into the swing of things. So I mentioned at the start of the episode that we were recording this in two parts. If I sound different, better, hopefully, maybe worse.
You do sound better from what I remember.
Good. I've still got a bit.
You were hoarse 2 days ago.
Yeah, I was hacking up a lung. So we recorded the first. I think it'll end up being closer to like a third of things. So we'll trim it down. Whatever. But if you notice a difference and this feels abrupt, here we are. And we're going to jump back in medias res.
Yeah. I did have some nice breakfast for dinner, so
good.
I'm good to go.
Cool. How'd you do your eggs?
Oh, scrambled. I scrambled them with water. I add some water to it.
Interesting.
And then scramble with that. I think Gordon Ramsay does that. I've seen people talk about it online. It gets super fluffy.
Interesting.
It's delicious. Best. Yeah, I will never go back to like milk or anything.
Yeah, I never add anything to my scrambled eggs. What I learned from Marco Pierre White is to just cook them real slow.
Oh.
You cook them real slow, and they just end up creamy and delightful.
Yeah.
Anyway, we don't need any more of this shit because we got a lot to cover, and we have enough of this.
Yeah, actually, really not that much to cover. We got 8 pages. Usually you're at 20, so.
Yeah, I mean, this is 17. We've done 4, and like I was just telling Evan, some of it's.
Oh, you have. Oh, I thought what you said before is that there's 12 total.
No, did 12 more.
Okay.
Well, it's 12 total because you'll see.
Okay,
I just copied and pasted some shit in here, so yeah. But we've got some stuff to cover, so yeah. Let's dive back into Somerton Man. Woo! Yeah. All right, so right away the police put out a bulletin. They're asking for potential witnesses to come forward with any information that they may have about this mysterious man that they've found on the beach. 2 separate couples came forward claiming to have seen the man or someone kind of matching his description on the same stretch of beach the evening before. Both couples assumed that the man was a drunk, despite his smartly dressed appearance, with the first couple stating that they'd seen him reach out his arm and then sort of let it drop limply to his side as they were walking by at around 7 p.m., and the second couple claimed that he had not moved at all when they had seen him, sometime between 7:30 and 8 p.m. of that same night.
Those people didn't think that he was trying to wave them down?
No. I mean, I think it was probably a pretty common thing. First of all, it's 1940. Well, it's about to be 1949. It's 1948 at this point. So, I think people are a little laxer with shit like this. I feel like this would set off more alarm bells for me. But I feel like back then people had much more of nothing weird's happening here. He's probably just a fellow who's had too many pints of lager. And, we should leave him alone. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. But, yeah, it is a little fishy.
I would have been maybe this lad is trying to flag me down and need some help if he's limply raising his arm as I walk by, and then it drops to his side like a sack of potatoes.
Yeah. No one did. A third witness stated, fact, that they had seen...
Night,
they stated that they'd seen another man... standing atop the seawall, sort of gazing down the stairs at the motionless figure of the guy slumped against the base of the seawall as she was walking by. And that guy was just looking at him and just did nothing.
This fella has had too much to drink.
Yeah. Oh, this
everybody's just gawking at the drunk dude.
This mischievous little scamp.
Yeah.
So all of the people agreed that the man was in something like his final resting position at the time that they'd seen him. And aside from the raised arm, nobody claimed to see any motion or response from the guy. Meanwhile, the local coroner had begun his examination, finding the man to be in good physical shape, broadly built, and with a few defining features. First, he had no hat or wallet. The no hat thing was just weird because it was 1948 and men would have generally had a hat. No wallet's especially weird because he's got no money and no identification. Also, all of the labels had been removed from every article of clothing that he was wearing.
So, you know what this reminds me of? And I guess some spoilers here in case, you haven't seen this movie that came out 15 years ago. But it's like Burn After Reading. When
I haven't seen that movie probably in 15 years, so...
Yeah, when Brad Pitt, he plays a moron at a gym, and they're trying to get dirt on a guy who used to work for the CIA, and Francis McDormand's character tells him to remove all of the tags from his suit so that he doesn't have identification in case he gets caught, and he has nothing in his wallet, basically at all, no identification, and he's hiding in the closet when George Clooney, who's banging the CIA analyst's wife, gets there to take a shower, and he finds Brad Pitt in the closet, shoots him in the face, kills him, and he goes, "Jesus Christ, I killed a spook." That's what this is reminding me of. He's got the tags ripped out of his clothing. He's got nothing in his wallet.
Well, yeah.
So maybe he's just a dumb gym employee who got killed on the beach because somebody thought he was a spook.
Could be.
No. It could be a Burn After Reading scenario.
It could be. The clothing... in the coroner's inquest is also, they do find that it's likely of U.S. origin, specifically based on the type of cotton fiber that's used in some of the items, which that's going to continue to be kind of a red herring that baffles people. Was this guy from the U.S.? Why is he wearing all clothes from the U.S.? Who is he? I don't know. He had strong calves and weird wedge-shaped feet, like someone who would have done ballet or worn sharp-toed boots regularly, and his hands showed very little callousing, suggesting that he would have done some sort of a sissy job like podcasting, because people who do podcasts probably have very soft hands. His dental records also did not match any on file. But again, I mean, a lot of this, it's 1948, so how good were the dental records? It's a lot to.
I mean, toothbrushes haven't even been a thing for 20 years at this point.
Right. It's a lot to presuppose, but whatever. He had no external wound or injury, though he did show some internal oddities. His heart appeared completely normal. No sign of a heart attack or anything like that.
Not the size of a chestnut in black.
Yeah. Yep, not a drop of blood in his body. However, his entire windpipe appeared to be deeply congested and showed minor signs of ulceration. There was blood and hemorrhaging in his stomach, and also a lot of blood cells in his liver. And his spleen was swollen to roughly 3 times its normal size. His final meal, apparently, was a simple pasty, which is like a little meat pie. Interestingly, the coroner placed his time of death between 1 and 2 a.m. on the morning of the 1st, so several hours after the witnesses who had seen his motionless body slumped by the seawall the previous night. Bear in mind, they had seen him between 7 and 8 p.m. on the night of the 30th.
So pretty good chance he was trying to flag people down.
Potentially. But he was also motionless and appeared completely unconscious. So probably still alive, but comatose or something.
Yeah.
So the cause of death is totally inconclusive, though 3 separate medical witnesses all testify that it just really did not appear to have been anything natural. Something was definitely up.
Yep.
Poison was suspected, though there was no obvious evidence as to how, where, or when that poison had been administered, so it could not be conclusively stated as the cause of death.
Maybe the little meat pie.
Could have been, but the meat pie did not appear to be contaminated. The coroner himself suspected some sort of a barbiturate. The police received no further information regarding the identity of the Somerton man, as he was beginning to be known. And so 10 days after his discovery, he was embalmed to allow for the investigation to continue. The first time something of this nature had to be done in the area that police could recall. The new year came and went, and the case was beginning to languish when a new discovery was made that thrust it immediately back into the spotlight. So I'm going to read again from a different newspaper here. This is the front page of the January 15th, 1949 issue of the Adelaide Advertiser. The headline reads, Somerton Mystery Clue.
Nice, bringing it back. The bad Aussie accent.
A suitcase, which police believe might have belonged to the man who was found dead on the beach at Somerton on December 1st, was recovered from the cloakroom of the Adelaide railway station yesterday. The case contained a number of articles, including a pair of light brown trousers, in the cuffs of which was some sand. 2 dry cleaning marks were also found inside the trousers. Detective Sergeant R.L. Lean, with these marks as a clue, will try to trace the owner of the trousers.
I'm not going to lie, I retained absolutely zero of that because I was just focused on the accent.
That's okay. Well, luckily, when people are listening
luckily
to podcasts,
I can read
they can just rewind. The brand label had been removed from the suitcase, which had been checked into the rail station cloakroom on November 30th, sometime during the day. Remember, this was the same day that Somerton Man found his way to the beach and met his demise. And then more details.
So wait, so this was found 2 months later?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so he was found December 1st. This is January 15th.
Oh, yeah, so he had... sorry, I'm kind of, remembering this, too. So he had those, unused travel tickets for a train.
Yeah.
And then this was found checked in to the rail station cloakroom.
Yes.
So
in Adelaide. So he's out in the suburbs now. This is back in the city of Adelaide.
And the tickets were unused.
Yeah, so the train ticket was definitely unused.
So
the bus ticket may have been used. The bus ticket was unclear.
So he checked this into the train station in Adelaide.
Yeah.
Did not take the train from Adelaide. Ends up in Somerton anyway.
Yeah. May have taken the bus. It's possible that he may have taken the bus. Yeah, the bus
Somehow
ticket was
he makes
unclear.
his way there, but it's not on the train.
Yeah, he did not take the train. And the ticket was for like a 10:30 a.m. Train out of Adelaide. Which
was it to Somerton?
No, it was to another beach.
Huh. So
And
it
he
sounds
was
like
not-
maybe he was waylaid while at the station getting ready to go there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then it would have been weird that he hopped on maybe on a bus and found his way up to Somerton, and
Or maybe he was killed and somebody planted the used bus ticket but took him there somewhere else.
Maybe.
Else.
yeah,
You know?
possibly. Yeah, and it literally could be anything. That's
Yeah.
the crazy thing about this. There's so much room for, and that's why people love this story because there's so
Yeah.
much like, what the fuck? Like who is this fucking guy? How'd he get here?
Yeah. Yeah, if he's some kind of spook, they're trying to hide their tracks, but they didn't realize that he had like checked in his bag in Adelaide or something like that, you know what I mean? But he was like
Right.
assassinated. Mystery solved.
So they then would release more information on the contents of the case. So this is from the January 18th issue of that same paper. And keep in mind, this is all front page news. People are going bonkers over this shit.
Yeah, in 1949, this is the craziest story in Australia.
Yeah. Definite clue in Somerton mystery. Detectives obtained their first real clue in the Somerton body mystery yesterday, when they examined clothing found in a suitcase recovered from the cloakroom of the Adelaide railway station. Detective Sergeant R.L. Lean, who, with Detective L. Brown and plainclothes constable D. Bartlett, is engaged on the case, said yesterday that he was satisfied beyond doubt that the clothing in the suitcase belonged to the man found dead at Somerton on December 1st. He had concluded this after closely examining a card of brown cotton found in the suitcase. Of an unusual type, it was identical with the cotton used to repair the lining of a pocket in the dead man's trousers and to sew buttons on a pair of trousers found in the suitcase. A puzzling feature about the clothing in the suitcase was that, with the exception of the names T. Keane and Keane without the E on a singlet, all name tabs have been removed from the garments. Lamp test. Mutilated name tabs on other pieces of clothing in the suitcase were placed under an infrared ray lamp yesterday in an unsuccessful effort to read them. Police believe that whoever removed the name tabs from the clothing either overlooked the names on the two pieces of clothing or purposely left them on, knowing that the dead man's name was not Keane or Keane without the E. Another piece of evidence connecting the suitcase with the dead man was the discovery in the case of a small brown button, identical with buttons on the dead man's trousers. Articles found in the suitcase were a red checkered dressing gown, pair of red slippers, pajamas, shaving gear, an electrician's screwdriver, a stenciling brush, and a table knife which had been cut down into a short and sharp instrument. 2 tickets. The only articles found on the dead man were a punched single train ticket to Henley, which had not been used, and a bus ticket to Somerton. The train ticket had been issued between 6 a.m. and noon on November 30th, and the bus ticket for a bus leaving Adelaide at about 11:15 a.m. the same day. Because he has not yet been identified, police believe that the dead man probably arrived in Adelaide only on the morning of November 30th, and after shaving at the railway station, remember he was clean-shaven when found, deposited his luggage in the cloakroom. He is then thought to have bought a ticket to travel to Henley, missed his train, and then walked across to the bus terminus opposite the station and caught a bus to Somerton. Although a post-mortem was held, police state that it did not reveal the cause of death, and this is providing them with a second difficult aspect of the case. Already, nearly 40 persons have viewed the body, which has been embalmed for your viewing pleasure at the city morgue. I didn't add that. That's what it says in the fucking newspaper. Embalmed for your viewing pleasure.
That may be a little. I may have taken some license with that part.
Oh, did you do that?
Yeah, I just sneakily add it while you were way up.
I was like, how did I not notice that? Whatever. It's Australia. Man.
Yeah, no, the embalmed for your viewing pleasure was that was me.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yes.
So, according to the available forensics of the day, this case seemed to be a definite match for the body found on the beach, and the plot is now just thickening. No T. Keane was reported missing in any English-speaking country that the police had contact with, and so it was assumed this was sort of a red herring. Like they said in the article, like, those are the only names left in the clothing, and so it was thought that the reason those were the only names left is that the killer or the person who was dead knew that person could not be connected with the body, and so, like, why remove them? They were unable to find a match for the dry cleaning tickets that he had on him.
Can I make, like, a brief aside real quick? So the two different spellings of Keene, too, like that, that also, like, a lot reminds me of, like, Lee Harvey Oswald, who would, like, slightly change the spelling of his name while, like, doing stuff. Like, sometimes he would call himself Leon Oswald. Mm-hmm. Just, like, slight changes like that. So it reminded me of that. You see that sometimes with, like, other spooks, too, where they have these, like, aliases. And it's, like, the same name, just with slight changes in spelling or pronunciation.
Yeah, it's interesting. Things are definitely, like, more lax. I mean, this is a little recent for something like that, but, like, if you go back 100 years or 120 years, people were, like, way more lax with how they spelled their names on, like, government documents, you know, in different years and stuff. I know even, like, you know, talking to my grandfather who was really into, like, family tree shit for a while,
yeah,
it was tough because you would find people that we were ostensibly related to who spelled our last name multiple different ways, you know, over the course of their lives. And that's, you know, not that long ago. That's, you know, turn of the 20th century. So maybe it wasn't that weird. But again, like, you don't see that as much when you're entering into the 40s. Maybe it was more of a thing in Australia, but odd to see different spellings of the name like that, for sure.
Yeah, generally, my father's last name, there's really kind of only one way to spell that, so that's basically always spelled the same. But for my mother's last name, which is, like, from a town in Spain, you'll see, like, even going back, like, slightly different variations. Sometimes you see the day in front of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't. And then, obviously, like, sometimes, you know, some of the letters are switched a little bit, like a Z to an S or whatever. But
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely so it's not, like, unheard of, but it is a little weird. It's definitely of note. So like I said, they couldn't find any connection to the dry cleaning tickets, and they also weren't able to trace the rail tickets any further. I mean, this was not, you know, nowadays, like, if somebody bought it with a credit card, it's like, okay, you've got this whole paper trail, but, like, no, it just sort of ends with that. They know when he bought it, where he was supposed to go, and that's kind of it. The coroner's inquest. There was now a coroner's inquest that was brought about in June of 1949, which found a few new interesting tidbits. For one, the guy's shoes, and in fact his clothing in general, were, like, remarkably clean for somebody who had apparently been wandering around aimlessly and missing their trains and then, like, dying on the beach. Stuff all looked in really good shape. It's not like he was, like, some vagabond who was all dirty and scruffy. He was, like, really well dressed, and his shoes were kind of spotless and had just been polished, and all very odd. During the inquest, a professor of pharmacology from the University of Adelaide testified that a certain category of drugs called glycosides, or at the time sometimes glucosides, used in cardiology could account for the death. These drugs, which at the time were not publicly revealed, but we now know were digoxin, an early medication used for treatment of various cardiac conditions, mostly pretty benign stuff like heart murmurs, I think, and ouabain, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Ouabain, which was a toxin that has been used for centuries as a dart poison in eastern Africa. These could have conceivably caused the oddly prolonged death of the man. Remember, he was last seen moving at 7 p.m. on November 30th, and then apparently died at 2 a.m. on December 1st. And also, the total lack of external or obvious trauma, i.e. thrashing around, vomiting, any of the usual signs of somebody being poisoned that you might expect, like some sort of trauma response.
At the neck or something.
Nothing. Yeah, he had none of that. He just looked like he'd fallen asleep and just passed away. And the only real evidence of anything wrong was, like I said,
his fucked up organs.
The mucus buildup, his swollen spleen, the blood, the hemorrhaging, things like that.
Yeah.
So in the end, the coroner who was leading the inquest, a guy named Thomas Cleland, or Cleland, I want to say Cleland. Thomas Cleland. Concluded that while he was confident in his own opinion, stating that the cause of death had likely been poisoning by, he said a glucoside, we would call it a glycoside. I'm not big on that shit. I don't know if there's still a difference or what, but I've seen it spelled both ways. The evidence was not sufficient to show whether this had been administered by the deceased himself or by someone else, and really to even definitively state whether it was the cause of death at all. And so officially, even though he feels confident that glycoside poisoning is the cause of death, they cannot state that. It has to remain unknown.
Yeah, glucoside and glycoside are probably the exact same thing. A lot of times with chemicals like that, you can say things totally differently or similarly, but differently. You know what I mean? Like acetonitrile
sort of
is also
figured.
methyl cyanide. Dichloromethane is also methylene chloride. And it's
the fucking
really
Wild
up to the
West out
user.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's the Wild West out there.
Yeah, it's up to the user how you exactly want to say it.
Suicide blonde with the color of her hair, like a cheap distraction for a new affair. She wouldn't finish before it began. Wow, but lost the plan. You wanna make her suicide blonde. Love devastation, suicide blonde. You wanna make her suicide blonde. Love devastation, suicide blonde. Stripped to the beat, but her clothes stay on. White light everywhere, but you can't see a thing. Search and squeeze, a mad sad moment. Glory to you, gave me there. A goddamn revelation, put it to your hand. Save you from your misery like rain across the land. Don't you see the color of deception? Turning your world around again. You wanna make her suicide blonde. Love devastation, suicide blonde. You wanna make her suicide blonde. Love devastation, suicide blonde. You wanna make her suicide blonde. You wanna make
So moving on, the last bit of evidence found is maybe the most enigmatic and has sort of come to be like the little mascot or the hallmark of this case. Concurrent to the inquest that we were just talking about, they're just going over the body again, and a small piece of rolled up paper was found sewed into a little secret pocket inside one of the man's trouser pockets. And so this next bit is about that, and this is from the front page of the June 9th, 1949 issue of the Adelaide Advertiser. Cryptic note on body. The translation by public library officials yesterday of a cryptic note discovered in the clothing of the unidentified man found dead at Somerton on December 1st has caused detectives to intensify their inquiries in an effort to solve what is considered the strangest case of its time in the history of the South Australia Police Force. The note, which was printed on a scrap of paper, read, "Tamam Shud." The words "Tamam Shud" are to be found at the end of the last verse of the English translation of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Tamam Shud is believed to be a contraction of the Tamain Shudan, which according to Wollaston's English to Persian dictionary means to end, or to finish. Detectives believe that the dead man cut out the words of the book in an effort to Detectives believe that the dead man cut the words out of a book. In an effort to trace the book, photographs of the scrap of paper will be sent to interstate police.
Sounds like something from Dune.
I know, dude.
Shud.
It really does. Yeah, Shai Hulud.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Great band, too, and they're actually going on tour. They're touring with somebody random. They're going on tour with, they're going on tour with God Forbid. Do you remember that, old metalcore band that, just got back together? They had a few cool songs, whatever. It wasn't really ever my thing, but Shai Hulud is, opening for them, which is rad. I've always wanted to see that band. Anyway.
Speaking of shows, my buddy from work just told me that Obituary is going on tour with Blood Incantation as an opener.
Oh, that sounds pretty awesome. There's so many good shows coming up.
Yeah, seriously.
This past year was good, and I feel like this next year is going to be good. We should just go to as many.
Gojira and Mastodon in August. I want to go.
I've seen both of those bands multiple times, but I feel like it's been a while, and I would be down. I mean, that sounds...
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely going to go to that one. I also bought the Elder tickets at Alchemy.
Oh, you bought those
That's
already?
in April. I bought 2, so one.
Do you have somebody lined up for number 2 already? Do you have somebody lined up for number 2 already?
Yeah, my roommate. So
okay,
you should buy one.
Yeah, because I was going to say I can't commit to that, but I could theoretically maybe. So
you should buy it as quickly as possible because Alchemy's small and that'll definitely sell out fast.
Yeah, of all the shows we talked about, that's the only one that I'm sort of unsure about just because of timing and things. But I think
it's on a Thursday.
Oh, if it's on a if it's on a Thursday, I'll just buy one when we get off.
All right, yeah.
I'll look anything on a Thursday. I mean, that's my day off, listeners. If you're ever trying to stalk and kill me, yeah, anything on a Thursday, I'll just fucking do.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it's on a Thursday.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That's decided. So Omar Khayyam, or Khayyam probably, was a Seljuk Persian poet of the 11th and 12th centuries, who was famed as one of the best Muslim poets of his day. He was sort of a polymath. He did all sorts of things. He was like a mathematician and a philosopher.
Great name, too.
Yeah, great name. Omar Khayyam.
Yeah.
So this is obviously modern-day Iran. The clipping found on the dead man was believed to have been from an English translation of a book of poetry attributed to Omar Khayyam by the English poet Edward Fitzgerald, which was published in 1859. That's the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. So the cops put their feelers out to find the specific copy of the Rubaiyat that the passage had been torn from, and eventually a man came forward saying that he had found the book, and examination under a microscope confirmed that it was likely, in fact, the same copy.
Ooh.
Now, there has been some confusion over the ensuing years about the circumstances surrounding the whens and the wheres of the discovery of this book, which leave things a little murky. But the general consensus is that this book was likely picked up by this person who is anonymous. The police obviously didn't find them to be a suspect, and so didn't release their name. That was sort of a common thing with this case. The lead detectives would use aliases to describe sources and stuff, and so there's a lot of sort of missing links. Also, in the ensuing years, a lot of witness statements have been lost. A lot of the primary source material is gone, so it's all just referential. It's a lot like studying ancient Rome, where you have referential text to ancient Greek stuff that no longer exists. Yeah. It's sort of like that. There's just been so much lost that we're all kind of filling in the blanks with this. Mm-hmm. But so the general consensus, there were some news reports that I read from the time that linked the book to having been found as much as 2 weeks before the body, which drove people kind of nuts at the time because they're like, well, that would have meant that he had been in the area before because he had just, supposedly taken the bus out there that day. And also, I want to kind of circle back and clarify. So at the start of our narrative, when I describe the 2 tickets as unused, it's because when they found the body, they couldn't verify that the bus ticket had been used. By the time I read to you that newspaper reporting, they realized that he had taken the bus. So he didn't take the train. It's by this point in the narrative, it's established, or at least
pretty confirmed that he didn't.
Pretty confirmed that he took the bus, right? So I never really explicitly said that. So
90% sure on both of those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Didn't take the train, probably took the bus. When they found the body, they couldn't tell if the bus ticket was used or not. There was no obvious mark on it that had been clipped or whatever, which there's a million reasons for that. It could have just been neglected or whatever, but at this point, they've now traced, he's taken the bus to Somerton.
Okay.
Sorry for that little aside. I just thought that might be useful.
Yep.
But now the general consensus is that the book was probably picked up on the beach by somebody or nearby by somebody around the time that the body was found, and there was no real reason to suspect it had any connection. It was just a book of poetry.
Yeah. Ripped out and tossed it before he died or something like that.
Right, and then sort of tucked it into this little hidden pocket that was inside one of his pockets. And so the person who had it had no real reason to suspect it was anything important until the cops said, we're looking for this copy of this book, and this guy's like, oh shit, I found a copy of that book right there after it happened. And so this book adds the last little weird pieces of the puzzle that we are looking for here. So on the reverse of the last page, so the last page where the word tamam shud is removed, and it sort of means the end, right? I think it was literally just the end of the book of poetry. The final page on the back of that is blank, and they found indentations pushed into that back page as if somebody had laid a piece of paper over it and written on top of it. And it looked like it was some sort of code. So you guys can look this up. If you look up Tamam Shud code, it'll come right up. You can see pictures of it.
Yeah.
I actually have a picture of it that I can drop in the text for you, the chat. So Evan can see the...
Raglababd.
So they've filled in the blanks here, but... At first, they thought that this was some sort of foreign language, some weird Cthulhu shit. But basically, it's five lines of text in big block English letters, WRGOABABD, and then the line MLIAOI crossed out, and then the line WTBIMPANETP, and then a little asterisk that's also been crossed out. Then MLIABOAIAQC, and then ITTMTSAMSTGAB.
Lines 2 and 4 are very similar.
Yeah.
At least to start it, yeah.
They do. And also there's a lot of confusion over whether that first letter is, if you look at it, it could be an M or a W, but they assume it's probably a W.
Yeah.
It's closer to a W than an M, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's weird.
So subsequent attempts to decipher this as a potential code have all kind of proved unsatisfactory. There were thoughts about what it could be. Like I said, some people thought maybe it was some sort of ancient language. I mean, it's found in this book of Old Persian poetry. But pretty quickly, people are realizing that this is some sort of a cipher. And to this day, the true meaning of it remains a mystery, and they actually are now saying they'll likely never figure it out. It's not any code that mathematicians or code experts have been able to decipher. And so the thought is that it's probably not a code, it's probably a shorthand, and that it's just a simple, like, it's the first letters of a string of words put down to remember something by the person who wrote it. But even modern attempts to put that into, like, computer programs that might figure that out, it hasn't come up. So it's probably not going to.
Yeah.
And so we'll probably never really know what this means. It's kind of a red herring. But then also, this is another fun bit, and this is a little more interesting. There was a telephone number written in the back of the book. And so they called this telephone number and found out that it belonged to a nurse named Jessica Thomson, who lived right down the fucking road from where the guy's body was found in the little neighborhood of Glen Elg on Mosley Street, literally like 1,300 feet from where Somerton Man was found. And upon being interviewed, Miss Thomson was not very helpful. She claimed no knowledge of the man or why he would show up with her phone number in the middle of her suburb in the middle of the night and then wind up dead down the road from her house. Little sus. She did, however, state that at one point in late 1948, a strange man that she had never met had appeared at her home while she was away and had apparently been asking her neighbors about her whereabouts before disappearing. Right? And so she doesn't see any connection there, apparently, but this did happen. Now, Miss Thomson passed in 2007, or Mrs. Thomson. She was married to a guy named Prosper Thomson, which feels very like New England Puritan witch trial-y, but whatever. But she had multiple surviving children, one of whom was a daughter, and they believed that she knew who this man was. The prevailing thought among her surviving relatives and among the police was that she definitely knew more than she was letting on. And realistically, she probably did.
Yeah, I would say pretty good chance.
Very odd that her phone number would be in the back of a random book. And there's more connections here. So she did claim that she had at one point owned a copy of the Rubaiyat while serving as a nurse in a Sydney War Hospital, and had given it to
during the war, you say, huh?
Yes, during the war, like with the Nazis and shit, who loved their weird esoteric stuff. And then she had given it to a man named Alf Boxall, with whom she sort of probably had a fling, and corresponded during the war. And then after the war, they ended up breaking their correspondence, apparently. She claimed that he reached out in, like, 1945, and she responded and said, I can't keep talking to you. I'm married now. They would go on to figure out, now this is in 1951, I believe she's being interviewed. She hadn't actually been married until 1950, like the previous year. So when she said that to this guy, she wasn't actually married to Prosper Thomson.
As well.
She's sounding very spooky, and she will sound more spooky to you. So they're like, okay, this Alf Boxall, and they were like, where is this guy? And she's like, I have no idea. I haven't talked to him since 1945. So they're like, well, that's got to be him. They're like, is this him? And she's like, it doesn't look like him. I can't tell. They showed her they had made a plaster cast of the guy's head and then embalmed him. So they showed him the plaster cast, and she looked at that, and she was like, I don't know, man. I couldn't tell you. This could be him, but I don't think so. So they're like, okay, it's got to be Alf Boxall. That would make sense. He had a copy of the book. He was probably a jilted lover. So they go looking for him, and the thing about Alf Boxall is he's fucking alive. It's 1940. They find him, and he's in Sydney. He's alive and well, and he's still in possession of his fully intact copy of the Rubaiyat. They ask him, like, do you remember getting this book from this chick? And he's like, yeah, it's right here. And he fucking has it, and he hands it to her. Or hands it to the police, and it still has Tamam Shud in the back and everything. So it's not the same copy. I mean, it could be that they all had a copy. Who knows? But so it's not Alf Boxall.
This book had something to do with the cipher,
potentially. But that's the thing. They've combed through that, and there's nothing that they can find in the book that corresponds to it. So all very odd.
Yeah.
Walking round the room singing stormy weather at 57 Mount Pleasant Street. Well, it's the same room, but everything's different. You can fight the sleep, but not the dream. Things ain't cooking in my kitchen. Strange affliction wash over me. Julius Caesar and the Roman Empire couldn't conquer the blue sky. Well, there's a small boat made of China. It's going nowhere on the mantelpiece. Well, do I lie like a lounge room lizard, or do I sing like a bird released? Everywhere you go, always take the weather with you. Everywhere you go, always take the weather. Everywhere you go, always take the weather with you. Everywhere you go, always take the weather with you.
So who the fuck was this guy? That sort of takes us up to where the facts of the case end and speculation begins. And now, obviously, this is just a really interesting kind of mystery. It's just a little mystery, and it's interested people for a long time. I find it very interesting. Evans, clearly, his little conspiracy poisoned brain is latching on to this.
Well, I remember reading about this like years ago, probably in college or something like that. It was stoned out of my mind.
Yeah, this is exactly the type of shit that we like.
Yeah.
And so for decades after, it has remained a cold case, and filled with like wild dead ends and red herrings. One of the first to crop up in 1949 was a connection with the Magnuson affair, which occurred
really
the
Magnuson,
same.
not Magnuson?
Magnuson, yeah, it's Mangnoson, Magnuson.
Magnuson.
I keep wanting to say Magnuson, but it's Magnuson.
I know. I read it as that too until you just said it was Magnuson.
Yeah, that's believe me, I rechecked it many times because that made my brain hurt. So 12 miles up the coast from
name.
Somerton Park, the body of a 2-year-old little boy named Clive Magnuson was found.
What an Aussie name, dude.
I know. You see like your little baby, your brand new baby boy, and you're like, what shall I name this bundle of joy? Clive. Let's name him Clive Magnuson.
Clive Magnuson.
Oh, I'll tell you what, this boy's going to love his meat and potatoes. He's going to be a regular sausage roll eating fuck. Yeah, Clive, little Clive.
Clive Magnuson.
Unfortunately, little Clive, we shouldn't joke about him. He was found dead, stuffed into a sack next to the unconscious, exposure-ridden body of his father, Keith, who was not dead, but who was near to it. And they were kind of out in this like dune area of a beach, like I said, 12 miles up the coast. And the boy was not thought to have died of natural causes, but they couldn't conclusively figure out how he died. They never arrested the father. He went home. And then the reason this ended up getting connected was that the boy's mother would then claim to have been threatened and stalked by a masked man who drove by her one day, the first time, with like a handkerchief covering his face, and was basically like, talk to the cops or else. And she believed that this was linked to her husband's theories that he knew who the Somerton Man was. He claimed that the Somerton Man was this guy that he had used to work with. So she thought that was the reason that they were being threatened not to talk to police. Now, I think that these parents, or one of them, had something to do with killing their kid. And they kind of just made this connection to distract and seem like there was some conspiracy going on. Something tells me
Throw
Dad
a bunch
like
of shit out there to
something weird happened. I mean, you don't just wind up like naked and exposed next to the body of your dead kid in a fucking sack like that. Something fishy was going on with the Magnusons, but they were never conclusively linked to this. But the newspapers at the time obviously went bananas over this, and that's sort of the type of story that this became. It sort of became this tabloid thing. Like anytime something weird would happen, it's like, oh, could this be it? Right, Bat Boy, exactly. So a few years after the body of Somerton Man was buried, flowers began appearing at his grave, although no one was ever seen placing them there. The closest they ever came was there was a woman who was seen leaving the cemetery. There had been no flowers there, and then she was seen leaving, and then there were flowers there, and then they caught up to her and interviewed her, people that were like staking out the scene. Yeah. And she claimed not to have seen anybody else in the cemetery, and also that it wasn't her, and they had no way to prove that it was her, so whatever, she left. There was also a rumor that there was this inmate in Whanganui prison in New Zealand who claimed to know the man's identity, but would not give an interview, and so that was sort of a dead end, and it's just sort of probably some kook.
Yeah, I know.
I know who it is, but like,
who is it? Ow, fuck off.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you.
Fuck off, cunt.
Some dude with like rotten teeth and whatever.
It's just completely solitary.
Sorry.
He's just like completely solitary, living in some like fucking bush or something like that. Not like a bush, like shrub bush, but like in the bush.
Yeah, out in the bush.
Yeah.
So another interesting one that came up. So a former employee of the hotel, this is in the 50s, across from the train station in Adelaide, where the tickets had been purchased and the suitcase had been found, claimed that an odd man had stayed in the hotel in the days leading up to the death of Somerton Man and had checked out with almost nothing on him, except for a small black bag similar to something that a doctor would carry. And she claimed that a fellow employee who had looked into the bag had seen something like a, quote, needle in the bag or poking out of the bag. Right? And so she comes to the police with that like a couple years later, and they're just like, okay, anything else? And she's like, no, but isn't that weird? And they're like, yeah, if it's true, it's weird, sure. Like, okay.
Yeah.
So it's all very insubstantial, very spooky. Mm-hmm. And so, as Evan's been sort of hinting at, it's no surprise that people sort of thought maybe that this guy was a spook, which he very well might have been. The FBI and Scotland Yard were reached out to, obviously, and both denied any knowledge of this guy. And honestly, the spy angle, there's still not a lot to conclusively point to it. It's possible, but there's no real hard proof that's been publicly available. It was theorized at the time that Somerton Man might be from a Warsaw Pact nation, which would
wasn't
explain
a thing at the time.
Right, but like a nation that would go on to be in the Warsaw Pact,
Yeah.
like an Eastern Bloc nation.
Yeah.
Which would explain why his identity was difficult to ascertain. They weren't able to find any missing persons reports from him. Like I said, they checked like all English language speaking countries for a person with this name, but if he wasn't from one of those countries,
He was Polish or something.
he could have been, right.
Yeah.
And he's dead, so you can't interview him. There's no way to know if he's got an accent or where he's from or what language he speaks, whatever.
Yeah, so unless you got some doctor pulling out the calipers to try to prove his Slavic heritage or something.
Right. Yeah, right. It would all be very eugenic and freaky.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you can tell by his the cleavages in his head
that he used to squat quite often, like a gopnik. So there were 2 sites near his body that could potentially have been targets for espionage. The Radium Hill uranium mine, which is in South Australia, and it was the nation's first uranium mine, and the Anglo-Australian military testing site at Woomera. Though neither of these were ever conclusively linked to the body in any way, they were just sort of theorized as like, okay, well, if someone was here spying, what would they be spying on?
That would be a very both those places, I'm sure, are filled with spooks.
Yeah, exactly. So Alf Boxall, this is another connection to it, but to me it feels a little dead-endy, but maybe not. The army guy from before, now apparently he was linked to serious spooky shit for the Aussie government, both during and after the war, and gave some interviews where he kind of hinted at that, but never was conclusively linked to the scenario.
Doing some like MI6 stuff.
Yeah, he was doing something. But
I mean that's why with the book exactly, and the nurse, she sounded kind of spooky as well in the book.
Right. Well, so that's the other thing. So I mentioned how she had kids who kind of thought she was probably linked to this. So in 2013, Jessica Thomson, that nurse, her daughter Kate gave an interview to 60 Minutes in Australia where she discussed the possibility that both her mother and the Somerton Man may have been spies. She mentioned that her mother had an interest in communism and spoke fluent Russian, which she never explained how she knew, and also that she had a job teaching English to immigrants, which I think would be a really useful cover to.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like,
if you have an agent come to the country who doesn't, and they don't speak English,
their handler, and it would be a totally
as just an English teacher, but
right. Oh,
so
we have to meet weekly for class. You know what I mean?
So you can hide them around a bunch of people who aren't spies.
But also, she just speaks Russian,
but that's what I'm saying. So, but the teaching English, you can have one of the students be, an agent, and the rest of them are just normal people. So
right,
you can
exactly.
kind of hide them like that.
Exactly. It makes total sense. That would be such an easy cover. So, all of that does look really spooky. And so then her son, a guy named Robin Thomson, also shared some really unique physical features with the Somerton Man. Specifically, the shape of his ears and the way they were set in his head, and
the calipers,
the shape of his teeth. No, this is more. There's more to this. This is not like a eugenics thing. This is like he had specifically his teeth. He had a specific bite pattern that's like, I guess, really rare. And so he actually theorized that he may have been related to Somerton Man, or his son, even like his secret son, and this guy was actually his father,
son or nephew or something.
Yeah, all kinds of weird, And so that was a theory for a long time. So it's all very compelling, and the theories are fun, except there has, as I've said, actually been a recent major break in the case, which might, maybe, put all the spy talk to rest.
White man, listen to the songs we sing. White man. our hearts a true country, and that cannot be stolen. We follow in the steps of our ancestry, and that cannot be broken. We don't serve your country, don't serve your king. Know your custom, don't speak your tongue. White man came, took everyone. We don't need protection, don't need your hand. Keep your promise on where we stand. We'll listen, we'll understand. Yeah, 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 yeah. We carry in our hearts the true country, and that cannot be stolen. We follow in the steps of our ancestry, and that cannot be broken. We carry in our hearts the true country, and that cannot be stolen. We follow in the steps of our ancestry, and that cannot be broken. Mining companies, household companies, uranium companies,
So, beginning in 2009, University of Adelaide professor Derek Abbott set out to crack the case once and for all, seeking to exhume the body and get fresh DNA to use. Now, it turns out the body had been preserved in formaldehyde for too long, so DNA is not really available from the body itself. It's all broken down. He then wanted to test Thomson's children to see if there was some way to compare DNA to any DNA he might find, or to see if they were not related to their supposed father, and then therefore maybe there's this like connection there, and the kids are kind of on board with this. So as a little fun part of the story, it's kind of weird. During his research, Abbott tracks down Robin Thomson, who is the nurse Jessica Thomson's son. He had a daughter named Rachel who had been given up for adoption and raised in New Zealand under the name Rachel Egan, and had no idea initially that she was even part of this whole thing. So he tracked her down and reached out to her and wanted to talk to her and get her DNA. They met, and within a day of meeting, they decided to get married. And now she jokes, like, I think he just married me for my DNA. Ha ha ha. There might be some truth to that. I'm like, yeah, it's all very weird. So he's, like, obsessed with this. And he clearly thinks that there is some connection with this family and Somerton Man. And that's, he's here. So this is why I think the conclusion that's about to arrive, I think it's very interesting. Because here's a guy who has a very kind of preconceived interest or notion that there is a connection here. This family has DNA links, and you know there's something to be found by sticking to just to looking into this family. So it's all kind of all over the place, but they do find that Egan, Robin Egan's daughter, the guy with the weird teeth and ears, who thought he might be Somerton Man's son, she is conclusively related to Prosper Thomson, who was the father, the actual father. And so if she's related to him, then her father was related to him, which means he's not secretly Somerton Man's son. He is the son of the man who raised him. And so that was a big surprise. And Robin Egan was like, Robin Thomson had thought that he was related to Somerton Man. But nope, just weird coincidence that he had similar teeth and ears, apparently. Finally, they found 3 good hairs stuck to the inside of that plaster face cast that I mentioned earlier that the police had made, and they began extracting mitochondrial DNA. Now, that can only, I think, trace you to the mother's side, or at least the DNA that they were using could only do that, so it's not initially conclusive, but he took it, and for years, he and geneticists were working on it, and then finally... so I think those hairs were found in 2017. In 2022, they came out and said that they have figured out to within 99% certainty, according to them, who Somerton Man was. And it turns out that he was some guy named Carl Webb. Carl was not, that anyone can surmise, a spy or related, at least genetically, to the Thomsons in any way. There's no way of knowing if he was he could have been a spook or he could have been her lover or something, but we don't know. He was an electrical engineer from the suburbs of Melbourne with no living relatives that had ever met him, though they did find he had living cousins and things like that. But through some genetic research and lots of sleuthing, they found out some things about him. He had been born in 1905 in Melbourne to an Australian mother and a German immigrant father from Hamburg. They opened a bakery, and he grew up working in the family bakery before embarking on a career as an electrical engineer making electrical instruments, different tools that people would use. He eventually married a pharmacist, someone with access to weird drugs and chemicals, named Dorothy Robertson in 1941, though by all accounts he was just like a total fucking asshole. He was intensely private and quiet, and suffered from intense bouts of depression, but could also be really violent and cruel and kind of piggish towards his wife, especially if he was like wrong in an argument, things like that. They say he would like fly off the handle. Apparently he was very fond of poetry, especially on the subject of death. Now the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam was largely dealt with dying and leaving a good legacy behind and making your life worthwhile and whatever, and so that kind of tracks. And apparently in 1946 he had once before attempted suicide by an overdose of ether, which his wife prevented. She found him and resuscitated him and saved him, only to have him awaken and immediately start like berating her for ruining his attempted suicide. So later that year, apparently he got like just worse after that and was more and more violent and aggressive. So she took off. And by 1947, he had gone completely off the grid. There's no more record of his life. Dorothy, eventually applied for divorce in absentia in 1951, not knowing where he was and not knowing that he was this famous dead body in South Australia. And the divorce was granted by the courts. So now here's a fun fact. His eldest sister, Frida, it turns out, was married to a man named Thomas Keane. The name on the suitcase, T. Keane. And they lived close by to Carl before his disappearance. Thomas Keane, it was thought, had lived in the U.S. At some point in his life, and he owned many U.S.-made items and articles of clothing. And so it's likely that the suitcase and clothes that Carl was wearing when he died were hand-me-downs or things that he had taken from his brother-in-law. Lastly, Abbott found evidence that Carl Webb was majorly into betting the ponies, and he theorizes now, with all this new information, that that infamous uncrackable code at the back of the book was probably just like a little shorthand list of like racing bets or horse names that Carl was planning on betting on, and apparently that's not super unrealistic. So apparently he may, in fact, have just been a guy who was kind of shitty and sad and lived a hard life and wasn't very nice, and then just decided to poison himself with this weird concoction of heart medications and die on the beach. So yeah, I want to sort of reiterate, bear in mind that this is the conclusion reached by the sort of borderline obsessed researcher who had based the last decade plus of his career on the notion that this guy was potentially a spook and connected to this family that he had married into and all this stuff. And now here he is coming out and saying, nah, probably not any of that. Probably just some fucking guy. And so where it stands now, the South Australia PD have not officially corroborated this. They're looking at all the evidence and closely examining Abbott's findings. And I'm assuming at some point in the next couple years there will be an official, response from them on this, whether the case is closed or remains open. But this could very well prove to be the end to the mysterious case of Somerton Man. A lot of questions hanging in the air.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that there is still hard, obviously I have no idea what it is, but there is still hard evidence linking him to two almost assured spies.
Yeah, it's weird that he had her phone number. It's very odd that he
maybe visited her.
Yeah,
and then also
I
mean, is there? You say that he theorizes that the infamous uncrackable code could just be a shorthand list of horses, but there's no actual evidence of that.
But there's also no evidence. So there.
Well, no, I'm not saying that there's evidence of anything else. I'm just saying that's just
his theory.
Yeah, there's no evidence to support that either.
Yeah,
so.
that's just a theory. Absolutely. Yeah. There is a lot of evidence to support the idea that it's some sort of shorthand rather than a code. Because they've had like expert code crackers looking at this for decades now, and they all have come to the conclusion that it's probably something kind of random, that there isn't really a system,
some sort of internal,
right? It was just a mnemonic device for specifically the person who wrote it to remember something specific, and there's no real way. I mean, they've basically said it's unlikely to ever be cracked. There will never be a solution to it because it's not following any discernible system. Now, that could also prove to be untrue. There have been examples of that type of thing being solved in the past, but that's the prevailing theory.
I mean,
right
you have
now.
like the Zodiac code and stuff like that too,
right?
Which is
right. That definitely is a code, but it could also be an intentional red herring. So
yeah, exactly.
So there are definitely lots of unanswered questions. I don't necessarily think that all the little pieces are fitting neatly together.
Oh, absolutely not.
It's still
just a bunch of like loose threads.
Yeah, but it is thought that at least his identity might now be known. And while that doesn't give us a whole lot more, he's not, a John Doe. He's probably got a name. It's Carl Webb, and so that's where we stand now in 2023 with the case of the Somerton Man, which I still think is just a fucking really interesting, weird little Australian mystery.
Yeah. It's cool. Cool.
Yeah. So thank you guys for listening. Is there anything that you wanted to add before we wrap it up?
We were talking about Nick Adams a bit off air.
Oh, yes. That's right.
Which, my man Nick Adams, the best Twitter account on there, talking about his memes.
Nick Adams, alpha male.
Yeah. It was clearly doing a bit. He does seem to be a conservative because he's written books dating back like about 10 years about conservative politics, but I definitely think he's also doing a bit with his crazy like pro-Trump tilt. Absolutely mind-blowing to see a video of him talk for the first time, and he's very Australian. Hyper
Australian, yeah. He's hysterical. He's
his videos are amazing. He's talking about like M&Ms. Not one M&M will pass our lips until Mars issues an apology to all men.
M&M.
Yeah,
I won't eat a single M&M until
until Mars issues an apology and pays reparations to men and releases an all men packet of M&Ms
and only men.
Only men, yeah. No women. Yeah, none of that sexy green M&M.
All men
that everybody wants to bang. But so we were talking about how amazing peanut M&Ms are, S-tier candy.
Yeah.
And I did say that I want to see the people at Mars, if they want to make things right, they're going to get their Imagineers on this and create an M&M pistachio. Now it's a pistachio covered with M&M, but then inside of a shell that you can still crack open. But then
so you look at it and it's a regular pistachio shell.
Yeah,
and then when you open it up, there is a candy coated M&M pistachio meat inside.
If Mars gets the best minds in America on this and comes up with the in shell pistachio M&M,
melts in your mouth, not in the shell.
Yeah, it must melt, not in the shell, but your mouth. Then I will consider all transgressions null and void. Yeah. We will be back to square one, tabula rasa. Mars M&Ms will then pass my lips.
Absolutely.
I did eat peanut M&Ms literally yesterday.
Yeah, dude, peanut M&Ms are
amazing.
We talked about this the other day. They're S tier. They're one of the best candies. Now there are lots of decent M&Ms, but peanut M&Ms are like just god level. They're so fucking
you
good.
Just crush a pack of those. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're
just laying down, watching some basketball or something like that. Bam, some peanut M&Ms.
Laying down specifically, like, just breathing heavy and really going at a big bag of M&Ms.
Shoot the ball.
These lazy sons of bitches don't know how to play defense.
Grandma, stop going for the three. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So that dude fucking sucks. He's
he rules, dude. He's the best.
So that's our little foray into Australian true crime culture. You'd call that true crime, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think it definitely figures as true crime. And so we hope you guys enjoyed it. I actually have another Australian story that I want to do at some point. So because this kind of made me realize that you guys may or may not have some valuable things to add to the global information economy. So you might see us return to your beautiful land down under at some point before too long.
Cool. All right. Anyway, so thanks for listening. Do all the things. Subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. You can rate us on Spotify. We really appreciate that. Again, we spread by word of mouth, so keep talking and tell people about us.
Yeah, and keep rocking.
Keep talking, keep rocking.
Yep.
And most importantly, keep your cock in.
Yeah.
Do not flash.
Keep it in.
In.
All right, guys. Thanks as always, and we will see you next time.
Peace.
I've lived in lonely cities. I've crossed deserts on camelback, and I filled the halls of folklore with things I'd rather we forget. I could sweep you off the streets, so saying this is goddamn tough. But this town might be big enough.
See, I reckon what you're saying, but this dog's run every course. I roamed without my boots on, I raced without my horse, and then I ate my horse's meat straight from my horse's bones. 'Cause this dog must roam alone.
You can shoot me in the mountains, in the cold fight rain.
We could do it in the countryside as we walk the plain.
It wouldn't give us any closure. All cowboys need to trust that this town might be big enough for both of us.
I said this ain't a lonely town, and what I wouldn't give to have a friend around.
We could trade in all our silver bullets and buy a patch of dust. This town might just be big enough for all of us. Australia to America. is over.